Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, guys. Peace. Hey guys, just finished watching Legion, Season 2, Episode 3, Chapter 11. Wow, what an episode. So this episode, it starts off with, we get the narrator going over this, in which we find out that, I found out the narrator on IMDb here is actually John Hamm, which I wouldn't have recognized his voice if I didn't see it on here on IMDb, which is pretty cool. But he goes over the idea that illness can be, the idea of an illness can become an illness. So he talks about how there's the placebo effect and there's nocebo effect, how you can trick your brain can trick yourself into thinking that something's happening. So if someone gives you a drink that's, or a pill or whatever, and they say this will make you throw up, this will make you throw up, even though it's just water with maybe food coloring in it, because your mind is conditioned to thinking that it will make you throw up, it will make you throw up, and your mind will trick yourself into throwing up. So I think that's an interesting idea that they're playing with, and it's an interesting theme that they went to watching this episode. And it's interesting with this episode because I watched like the first 10 minutes of the version they downloaded and stuff, and the audio was off, and didn't realize it until like 10 minutes into the episode, because you don't see anyone. It's just narration that's kind of seems to completely, you don't see any of the main characters, main actors that you're used to in the show, and that's an interesting idea, the way they're doing it that with this episode. So it's really fun seeing that. The idea about what else about our reality can actually be a disorder. So that's an interesting idea to think about throughout this episode. So then we can see Farouk Makto his end is dead. And it's really just his body, where his body's being buried. We find out it's being buried underneath some sort of monk temple type thing. So that's an interesting idea to play with. That'll be cool to see where that is. We don't know where that is. We get an idea that it's somewhere underneath that building, or secretly hidden there. And they're trying to stop Farouk Makto, the Shadow King. Wallace, we see Wallace is getting affected by that little creature that was out of the egg that affected David and stuff. So he gets infected in this episode. Then later on, everyone gets affected. But Carrie ends up. We see Carrie teaching Carrie just things, and because she's still. Because they're connected, they're separated, they can't really go into each other, they can't do that. He's supposed to go inside of her, where she's supposed to be on the outside now, which is something new. She doesn't know how to eat, she doesn't know how to do all the things that she usually does, that usually he does, type thing. So that's an interesting idea to play with, and that'll be cool to see things. And it's unclear though, as things are going on, do they still have their mental connection? Before, in the last season, whenever she got beaten up out in the field, he would get bruises too. Is that still connected, or are they completely separated right now at this point? So, they're not completely separated, because he still goes inside of him, type of thing, inside of her, and that's how they're inside out. But it's gonna be interesting to see, do they still have that mental connection? Because he didn't know that she was kind of infected with the teeth clenching thing. And he didn't know she was affected yet. I feel like if he hadn't been inside out, would he be able to sense her? Maybe they are connected, but they just don't know how to do it because they're backwards. Everything's backwards for them. So I think it's going to be cool to just play with that and see if they're still mentally connected. Can they still share each other's thoughts? If one of them gets hurt, do they still get hurt? Does the pain still go between the two of them? That'll be something fun to play with. So then we see a bloody hand. They find a bloody hand on the inside of where they keep all the people who are infected. And they find out that he's escaped, which was the monk who we saw in last week's episode, just at the end. It was in the last scene of the last week's episode. So then David decides to go and talk to Farouk, and he's in there, and Lenny keeps on asking him to let him out. We see a bit of there. And it's interesting with Audrey Plaza's character. It's almost as if they're keeping her just to keep her around, but she's so good. She was so good in season 1. She's so great here. It's just in this season, she's kind of like, oh, we have to use her because she's Audrey Plaza, and it's an interesting idea. I guess they could just get rid of her and stuff, but at the same time, getting rid of her for me is like a waste, because she's such a good character. Now, I wouldn't mind them kind of letting her free and letting her out, and then having her coming back later on when they actually have a storyline for her. But for now, she's just kind of there and not really doing anything. She's just kind of killing herself a little bit, and whenever we do see her on screen, it is great, because she's so good at these scenes. She's so good at these things. It is great, and I can't wait to see more of her. But hopefully they actually give her something to do, because so far she's just doing nothing in these few episodes that she's in. And then we find out that then David gets told by Farouk that by helping Farouk find his body and doing that, changing history, which Future Sid is telling him to do, he's pretty much erasing and destroying the existence of one-armed Sid who's from the future. That version, that timeline won't exist. So it doesn't, who knows if it's going to destroy her completely from the timeline. It could, but it also is definitely going to destroy that version of it. So David still has to think about that as he's going through and helping Farouk find his own body. So David wakes up to find everyone gone. David ends up finding Carrie. He's the only one who's not free. So they end up going and finding Wallace is kind of there. Was still affected, and his teeth, doing the teeth clenching thing. So they go inside of him, and he's in like everyone's in a different maze inside of their head. So they go through a different people's head, and he's in a thing where he can't remember anything because his powers are to remember everything, which is a utopia for him. So that's interesting idea, seeing that for him. And throughout the episode, David's getting flashes from Future Sid each letter until they spell the word hurry, which is interesting with that. And it's unclear if it's talking about this specific, what's going on in this specific episode, or the whole just helping Farouk find his body type thing. That is an interesting idea to play with. David and Wallace and Carrie end up getting Wallace out. David, Wallace, and Carrie end up going inside Melody's head. She's inside of some sort of maze type thing. So they're playing that with telling him cheat codes, and he ends up unlocking her and bringing her out. And then when they're out, there's some kids that end up taking out David. And David wakes up as the monks start following this stuff and following the monk's mind type thing, which was interesting with that. Seeing the monks' daily routine and stuff, that's all the monks started becoming affected by him. And then we see Melody and Wallace find Vermilion laying on the ground with the basket on the head guy. I can't think of his name, but the weaved basket on his head, laying on the ground with some wires kind of connecting to the monk as he's being controlled. It's type thing. The monk kind of knows that David's trying to help Farouk find his body, and then so David brings him to the roof to talk to them in private type thing. Although it's unclear if that was in the mind, because after they talk a bit about it, we see that the monk has jumped off to his death, and then we see after that David sees that Sid is up there too on the roof, just doing the teeth clearing thing, and he enters her mind, and that's where the episode ends. So it looks like next week's episode is going to be all about just dealing with Sid's mind. Maybe she's the one who's really kind of messed up because of the connection to the future version of her. That'll be really cool to see that and to see how things go with that. Him inside of her head throughout the whole episode. I think that's going to be cool to see that and delving in between that. I'm not sure why they didn't just give everyone, if next week's episode is entirely going to be inside Sid's head, or David's going to spend most of the episode, 80% to 90% of the episode inside of Sid's head. I wonder if they're going to do that. Why not give everyone a scene like that? So that'd be cool to see that. And Carrie also Guy Carrie went inside of, sounds dirty, but out of context, with context, it makes sense. He went inside of Carrie, so that'll be cool to see how things go with that. What is he seeing inside of there? Is he able to do stuff and wake her up on his own because it's her type thing, because of their connection? That would be cool to see that and see how things are going, and what is the Carrie's ultimate fantasy inside of her? What is inside of her head? It's something that she's always wanted before this. Right now, she might just want to go back to normal, but I think there might be something from before. That'll be an interesting idea to play with and to see where things are going to go with that. So all in all, this episode was an interesting episode. It was really cool dealing with Farouk and trying to find his body and dealing with the monk and stuff. That was quite cool. We're still not anywhere near. We're still a little bit closer now. We're a little bit closer to finding where the body is, obviously. We know it's underneath the monk building and stuff, but we just don't know where that is. So that'd be cool to see that. And at the beginning of the episode, we did see Farouk and his glasses with the pictures that David was drawing on the chalkboard before of his father versus him. And that'll be cool seeing that as we get closer and closer to eventually getting Professor X. And I think since they got John Hamm in this episode, this show does feel like it does have a bigger budget compared to other things like S.H.I.E.L.D. and the CW, DC shows and stuff. So it does feel like it does have a bigger bigger budget, and it would be cool to compare. I wish I could see, you know, like at a numbers budget for this show versus the Defenders show versus Daredevil shows and all those Netflix shows, and even things like Runway. The Marvel's Runaways on Hulu. It would be cool to see, get an idea to see where things are going. Like, what is the most expensive Shield show episode versus the cheapest episode on Shield on ABC, and then, you know, same thing for Netflix and same thing for Legion and all that stuff. It would be cool to see different ideas, just to get an idea of where the budget is comparing to there. And I think it would be interesting to see that. And I think this show, it could be cool to see that. And I would love to see Patrick Stewart jumping on the show. And I think it'd be a lot cooler to have Patrick Stewart on here than, in my opinion, of James McAvoy. But I think either way, it would be really cool to see who we get on here. But either way, I would like to see Professor Xavier. If not, a whole new actor, just cast it on its own, so you cannot have to connect it to anything like that. So it could be its own thing. I think, you know, by having Patrick Stewart on here, you don't have to set it up as to where it is in time, because it's Legion. You know, you don't really have to set that it's before or after Logan or anything like that. You don't have to connect to anything. Just have Patrick Stewart as him, and that'd be quite an interesting idea to play with. So we'll have to wait and see where things go with this. If we end up seeing Professor Xavier on the show, I think it would be really cool. Hopefully we can get some a legacy actor, one of those, you know, actors who have already played him. That would be really cool. But I don't see them getting anyone, James McAvoy, just because he's busy with the reshoots of the movie actually that he's doing for Dark Phoenix and stuff. That movie keeps on getting pushed back, so he's probably busy with that. And whereas I think Patrick Stewart is still probably a little bit more available for this, although he is quite busy on American Dad and things like that with voice acting. But it would be cool to see him just jump on here, even if they just had his voice type thing. If they just had Patrick Stewart doing voice acting, because then when he does American Dad or whatever, they can just say, hey, you know, can you do this? If I'm not mistaken, he does do a lot with Family Guy, American Dad, and he has voices on there. So if it's the same, it's all Fox type of thing. So it would be cool to see. That while he's in that studio just doing some voices and doing a CG version or whatever, and having the voice of Patrick Stewart would be cool too. Would be an interesting idea to get that, maybe a cheaper way than having him on the set. But all in all, it would be cool to see where things are going with this, and I like this episode. It was really cool seeing where things are going. I'm really excited to see, and it was really cool seeing David inside of people's minds, stuff, having full access to his powers and just being able to kind of ET touch them and everything was done like that and all that stuff. That's really cool seeing that. I'd like to see David playing with this, and I'm glad the fact that we still have that little bit of connection, that he was still affected by, you know, he still had a little bit of Shadow King inside of him, but yet so did Wallace, and he undid him, and so did everyone in this episode, and he's just undoing it and stuff. It's gonna be cool to see how infected Sid is gonna be. Why is she getting a full look? Why does it look like she's gonna get a full episode to deal with her stuff? Although in the trailer it looks like she wakes up in the trailer, so hopefully that's not, you know, that wasn't a spoiler. Maybe she wakes up and then freaks out a little bit, and then, you know, her eyes open, and then things happen, and then she's not actually awake. But it would be cool to see where things going with all this and how things kind of go in next week's episode. Looks like next week's episode is going to be heavily about Sid and David and their relationship and stuff. It's going to be a relationship heavy episode, but in a, you know, interesting way, with her going through her all of his life, where she's seen all of his Sid's already seen all of David's life in the first season. And when they were in his head all that time, and now he's going to be able to see her side, and that's really going to be cool to see that, to see some different things from each other, and maybe the connection where if there's anything from the future version of Sid, that'll be cool to see that too. So all in all, I can't wait to see next week's episode. So this episode is really cool. It has a 9.7 on IMDb here. I guess I'd give it like that. I mean, I give it a 9. It's really difficult to really give these things a number, but I'm definitely going to give it an 8 or 8.5 to 9 type thing. So yeah, let me know what you think, guys, about this episode in the comments below. Season 2, Episode 3, Chapter 11, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.
I'm Captain America, here to talk to you about one of the most valuable traits a soldier or student can have.
Subscribing.
Sometimes subscribing is the key to victory. Sometimes it leads to very little, and it seems like it's not worth it. And you wonder why you waited so long for something so disappointing. How many more of these?
You're still here.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, guys. Peace.
It's over.